Hello, folks. Do you remember these things? This thing, you'll see all dust flying about. This thing hasn't been plugged in for years. And this is, of course, one of those Alexa devices. I think it's one of the first editions, actually. And it seems like only yesterday that I was doing tutorials on how to build apps with this thing. And at the time, we all thought it was going to change the world. Do you remember? With this thing, you can play music from virtually anyone you like. You can listen to the news. You can place orders on Amazon. And of course, there's a Google edition as well. I've got a few of those around. And the idea is that you can do all sorts of things. In fact, I've even got a fancy light bulb somewhere. And I can say things like, change the lighting to blah, blah. And when that Alexa device came out, some of us were blown away. I remember on one of them, it might have been that or the Google one, they're very similar. And I remember I could set appointments and stuff like that. And I thought it was mind-blowing. Now, I have a question. How many of you today are building apps for this thing? I'm going to guess not one. How about the Google Home devices? Probably nobody. Are you even bothering to plug these in? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. I still think it's an impressive technology. But there's only one little fly in the ointment. And that is that in order for these types of things to be truly useful, you need a subscription. You need to be on board with something like Spotify or Amazon Music. Now, don't get me wrong, it can function without that stuff. However, without the subscription, you don't get all of the cool stuff. You're no longer able to listen to your favourite Al Jolson records or Engelbert Humperdinck. So, why am I bringing this into a conversation about OpenClaw? Well, I've spent some time really jumping headfirst into OpenClaw. Over the past few days, I've made a few little things. I made a forum assistant and annoyed the living daylights out of some people. I made a thing today that has, I can hardly say I made. I had it writing documentation today. I was quite pleased with that. I had it also sending emails to myself. I didn't have anything interesting to say, but nevertheless, I had it sending emails. And I've had it doing a few other little bits and pieces. My overall thoughts on the technology are that it's really, really impressive. But if I'm being entirely honest, I'm struggling to find a solid use case. Also, if I'm being really brutally honest, a lot of the use cases that I've seen are things that we're already able to do. I was asking, I think it was Gemini, what's the best use cases for OpenClaw? And I heard a guy talking about it on YouTube and saying, I have this thing update my calendar and it sets appointments and all of that stuff. Folks, that's exactly what this thing was doing years ago. And you never even had to type or go on your phone or anything. Same with the Google devices. You can just say, hey, book me an appointment and it would do it. So if I'm looking at all of the stuff that it's doing, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate the technology. It is impressive. And I know that there's good potential. The only thing is, I'm kind of getting Alexa vibes here. And let me elaborate on this a little bit. You see, in order for OpenClaw or any similar, I think the word is agent type technology, to be truly awesome, it needs to have web access. It needs to have the ability to go to a website and read it and interact with it and fill out forms and all of that stuff. If OpenClaw or any similar AI type agent technology does not have that ability, then it's like an Alexa app without the subscription. Suddenly, it's going to lose about 90% of its utility, in my opinion. Now, this is really important because I think that a lot of people are looking at AI right now, and some people are thinking it's going to fail miserably. Others are thinking it's going to change the world for better or for worse. And some of you are thinking, is AI going to keep getting better and better, or have we started to level off? I think that there's a variable that most people aren't really considering, and it may be the most important variable of all. And that is the scrape wars. I should have called this video Begun the Scrape Wars Have. To scrape from a website means to have some type of software that visits a web page or a website and extracts the data from the site. That's what we mean by scraping, right? Now, if you happen to own a site like, let's say some really super popular jobs website like Indeed or something like that, or LinkedIn, or even if you own a site like eBay or something, right? I'm telling you that the people who are looking after those sites, they are hiring branding companies and having long meetings about what type of font are we going to use, you know? What kind of tonality are we going to have on the web page? How shall we align the form buttons? And they take this kind of thing really, really seriously. Trust me, the idea of some random coming along and just, scraping all of the data, chucking it into a spreadsheet, I can assure you that is entirely unacceptable to the owners of any website that's worth its salt, actually. Now, this is not just speculation. There's already a whole bunch of court cases happening, and in fact, Cloudflare, and a whole lot of the web goes through Cloudflare. Cloudflare has been introducing all sorts of software that stops the bots, like the kind of thing we have on OpenClaw, from scraping the data. And right now, we have a sort of cat and mouse game going on. I suppose you could say an arms race between those who would like to use AI to scrape the data and those who are saying, no, we want to protect our intellectual assets, the websites. Now, I was saying a second ago, there's a whole bunch of court cases happening right now. One or two of them have actually finished. And in all cases, the courts are favouring the website owners. Furthermore, I've been reliably informed that the EU is soon going to be introducing some laws that are really going to be a kick in the nuts for those large AI providers who are into things like web scraping and so on. From a technical perspective, your guess is as good as mine. Like I say, it seems to be a sort of arms race. But from a legal perspective, it looks like the site owners are winning, for better or for worse. Now, I don't know for sure how this is all going to pan out. If I was going to hazard a guess, well, I don't know. You take a guess. However, I'll tell you one thing. If the AI guardians win the scrape wars, either technically or legally, and they're able to build this software that can just grab data from sites and all of that, if that happens, the internet as we know it will be gone. Indeed, the very concept of web design will be completely irrelevant, because you're going to have search engines and whatnot just grabbing data and then presenting it their way. Google has already demonstrated this technology in a keynote. This is not speculation. They know how to do this. However, if the site owners win, and through some technical or legal mechanism, they are able to block all of those who would like to use technologies like OpenClaw to scrape the data. If that happens, then OpenClaw becomes just like the Alexa, a version of OpenClaw that cannot interact with websites, and do so very well. It's going to be like an Alexa device that doesn't have a subscription. I think I got there eventually. So that's why I'm getting Alexa vibes off of OpenClaw.